Well, on that note, we have full lines, and I'm imagining we'll probably have full lines all day long, and so there's not any point in waiting around any longer. We'll go ahead and get straight to callers. As a reminder, we'll put the telephone number back up as we clear lines. Anybody who doesn't get through on the telephone today or doesn't want to can always email tv@atheist-community.org. And after today's show is over, we'll be on the air till about 6 o'clock. Anyone in the Austin area who'd like to join us will be at Threadgills at 301 West Riverside Drive. And as before, any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to come down for that as well. So we'll get right to calls. We've got Magic in Burnsville, North Carolina. Hello?
Yeah. Hello?
Yes. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
Good. You had a question?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm wondering.
Can we turn that up? I'm having a hard time hearing him.
I can't hear him either.
Okay. I'm wondering why you don't believe in God.
I can't hear him either.
You're wondering why we don't believe in God?
Yeah.
My initial question, probably to respond to yours, would be, how could I?
Okay. How could you?
Where?
Did we lose him?
Yeah, I'm still here.
You're
Okay.
still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah. I don't know what's actually wrong with your phone. We'll try and address the topic after letting you go, but I apologize. We just can't hear you, and I don't know if it's a problem with your line or all lines, and we'll find out. But thanks for calling.
No.
The issue of why you don't believe in God, I mean, your first question was, how could I? My first question is, okay, which God? What exactly are you meaning? I don't want to make too many assumptions, but the answer is going to be the same.
Well, but I'm not making an assumption that he's talking about why don't I believe in the Christian concept of God? Why don't I believe in any supernatural entity that oversees reality? Okay, once we determine that exists, then we can refine down further attributes. But the initial assumption has to be justified first.
Yeah, and I think by and large we have similar answers. It's for the same reason that we don't believe anything that we don't accept. Belief is something that needs to be justified by evidence. You have to not only just define what it is that you're claiming and make the claim clear, but you have to support that claim with sufficient evidence. And so Aaron's point of how could I cuts right to the chase on that. What is the reason that we should? And I wish that we hadn't had to drop that caller, because maybe then we could ask that question and get an answer as to why he thinks we should. Yeah. For now, though, we're going to have to move on. We've got Jason in Tampa.
Hi, guys. How are you?
How you doing?
Good. Yeah, I think I corresponded with each of you via email. I was Jason from CFI Tampa, and we're trying to get you guys both down here to speak in sunny Tampa, Florida. So we're hoping to make that work.
Oh, good.
Anyhow, I'll save that for another time. I wanted to hear your discussion on the accommodationist movement that's kind of been going on with various scientific institutes and organizations like the National Academy of Sciences, NCSE, and a few others. And they're presenting this idea that religion and science are not in conflict, and publishing these things in some of their publications.
I don't know what's going on with the phones, but as soon as we turned it up a little bit, we got the feedback, and he chopped up.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna put you on hold, Jason, because I think we can address this a little bit, and then I'll get back to you if we didn't. So just hang on, and I'll let them work on the phones behind the scenes.
If I understood the question, he's asking, and I only heard part of it, he's asking why are science organizations now rallying to say that there is not a conflict between religion and science?
Right.
Okay. Well, because realistically there isn't. I mean, we're all free to believe anything that we want, and we don't necessarily have to have a reason for our own personal beliefs. At any time that you want to state that I believe anything, you're welcome to do that. And Venom Fang X, one of the guys on YouTube once upon a time, complained that atheists were prohibiting him from saying that maybe there's a God. And I don't disagree with that. Go ahead, say so. I'll even say it with you. Maybe there is. The problem with assertions of that kind is when you drop the word maybe. When you state as fact that which is merely a personal speculation, that is something that I can only define as dishonest. You can't say that there is something until you can justify that comment. If you can't justify that comment, you're welcome to say that you believe that, but you have to preface the assertion with the words "I believe," and then I have nothing to argue with you about it.
And I'm mostly on exactly the same page. My thing is that when we're talking about the actions taken by some science organizations that we're labeling accommodationist, to say that there's no conflict, I think that claiming that there's no conflict is an assertion that's not necessarily true. It's true in some cases. It's true in many cases.
Let's say that there needn't be a conflict.
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Yeah, and you said that when you answered that there's not necessarily a conflict. Instead, what I think we're seeing is in areas where there's clearly a conflict, where some religious organization or some theistic movement is asserting that they have some answer that is in direct opposition to the scientific evidence. I think there are people who are willing to just say, we all have our own views about how things. No, I'm sorry, I can't buy that at all. You're entitled to have whatever view you want.
No,
but your view doesn't have any bearing on what's real.
I think the ideal religious belief would be to assume that there is some force beyond what we understand. Okay, fine, I accept. There's definitely things beyond what we understand. We don't know everything. Granted, I'll accept that too. When you want to assert then that all the science that we know and all the facts that we can show are actually wrong because your particular favorite interpretation of whichever fable you most like. I think that's where the problem comes in, is where it becomes dogmatic. You're defending a story against the disproof of the story. Now, it doesn't disprove God. You have to understand that whether God exists or not is irrelevant. I mean, we are still evolving apes, and the stories detailed in Genesis are still false either way. And your God's existence does not change that.
Yep. And the second half of Jason's question was our opinion on atheism versus anti-theism. And I guess it depends in part how you would normally define it. I often label myself as an anti-theist. I'm an atheist, and I'm also an anti-theist. It's not a mutually exclusive thing. And when I say that, I mean that by and large, I find theism to be divisive, harmful, and false. And therefore, I stand in opposition to that. I don't necessarily assert anything approaching absolute certainty that every theistic claim is necessarily false, or that these claims are of an impossible nature, although some of them, I would say, are an impossible nature, the same like a square circle.
In one of my videos, I did a discussion about Godzilla. All right, what if we propose that Godzilla exists? We just say that he exists. We come out and say Godzilla exists. Is that an honest statement? We don't have any evidence to back it up. We have substantial evidence to go against it.
It's not honest.
It's not an honest statement. So how is it an honest statement to say there's a God? You can't prove Godzilla doesn't exist. You can look everywhere. You haven't looked everywhere yet. There's some place in the Marianas Trench there might be a Godzilla. You can't, But if it's dishonest to state that anything else exists for which there is no supportive evidence, and why is it not dishonest to say that God exists? Same thing. I'm sorry. I'm sidetracking again.
No. It's a better way of phrasing the same thing I was saying. I think, Jason, did that get to both your questions?
Yeah, that was sufficient. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a lot for calling. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye. We have, we'll try Magic again. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Wow. We hear you now.
Yeah. Okay, English is my question. Is atheism against Christianity or just against all religions?
Okay, it's not against any religion, actually. There are actually atheist religions. Buddhism is often one good example of that. Taoism, pantheism of various forms, shaman beliefs, they're all religions that also happen to be atheist. Atheist does not mean that you reject the possibility of a God. I have to assist a number of people in this quite often. They often think that people will sometimes brand themselves as agnostics because they are unsure whether a God exists or not. That's all of us. An agnostic, to my understanding, is someone who actually does believe that there's a God, but believes that the nature of that God is beyond human comprehension. An atheist is somebody who has said that if there is a God, then our knowledge of it would be beyond human comprehension, but we don't actually believe there is one. The only thing that defines an atheist is that you are not convinced that there must be a God. If you're not convinced of this, if your worldview does not happen to include a God, and you have to define what that is, then you are atheist. Now, what he was saying before about anti-theists may be another realm. I mean, when you talk about how religions promote their specific agenda and their particular God and what he hates and who he hates and what he wants you to do to the people that he hates, that's where you get into his motivation for anti-theism. I think I'm speaking for you, and I probably shouldn't. But did that clarify